that she was running as an openly gay candidate, but because she has one of the most liberal records in Congress. She represents the Madison area. They said, you know, it's going to be really tough in a state like Wisconsin, in a state that has just put a Republican back into the governorship, that they were going to be able to win a Senate seat with this the liberal Democrat, especially one who was facing a popular former governor in Tommy Thompson. Look at what happened in Wisconsin. We're seeing now the Virginia race, the Senate race there. I think those were two races, certainly, that having a strong Obama win, very helpful.
She has, at least she used to have, one of the funnier lines about her situation. The line was that if, my candidacy will prove that an indefensible stereotyping of one of the more oppressed groups in America will end. I am talking, of course, about blondes. And it was a very nice, light touch. And I asked a friend who was from Wisconsin, who I saw a week ago, I said, how much has the sexuality issue come up in the race? He said, not at all. There was just no evidence, even on the fringe stuff, that even had raised its head.
Those of you who have not had the joy of covering the president's presidential campaign may not know this, but the people in McCormick Place right now are rocking out to the theme song from the campaign, the Bruce Springsteen song that introduced him at whatever it was, 101 some odd rallies over the last year and a half. I suspect there's a rather large media contingent that thinks with some delight that maybe the last time we hear the song.
So let me list a few random facts just as we wait for President Obama to take the stage here. Twitter now announcing that over the day today, 32 million tweets, with 23 million tweets sent after the first poll closed. Peak moment of the night, 327,000 tweets per minute when the broadcast networks projected Barack Obama winning a second term. Meanwhile, we are waiting for the popular vote totals. Thus far, we've seen them very, very close, but it's going to be very interesting. We've got Obama with a pretty commanding lead in the Electoral College, sweeping 7 out of the 8 battleground states. We're still waiting on Florida, but I think a lot of people will be looking to see what kind of margin he pulls out in the popular vote, because that will go directly to what kind of mandate he has. Also, an interesting tidbit out of New Hampshire tonight. New Hampshire making history, becoming the first state to be represented by a female governor and an all-female House and Senate delegation.
Wow. That is very interesting night for New Hampshire. New Hampshire has been really interesting. It's a state that we think of as live free or die. It has this very buttoned-down sort of reputation. Former rock-ribbed Republican state, and yet in the last 2 election cycles, it has been, actually 3 election cycles, it has really made these big dramatic swings. 2006, every single Republican swept out, even in the legislature flipping. 2008, more seats picked up in New Hampshire, or holding on to those seats. 2010, they were swept out. The Democrats swept out, Republicans swept in. Now 2012, it's Democrats swept back in, and those Democrats happen to be women, too.
And as a state, I've spent a lot of time in New Hampshire, having both of us. We both went to college in Maine. I started my career in Maine and covered a lot of politics in New Hampshire. It's a fascinating state. Demographically, it's a fascinating state as it stands out in stark relief to the rest of New England. It is the only battleground in New England in a reliably blue neighborhood. Yep. And that is because you have these two sort of interesting groups. You've got these old line conservatives there of a more moderate variety, but very much live free or die, small government. And then you also have this exurban flow from the People's Republic of Massachusetts up into New Hampshire. And I think you also just have this interesting New England situation, very characteristic New England set of ideologies, where on the one hand, people want small government, they don't want taxes, but they're also very much socially libertarian or liberal. So I think that allows for a state where you have a deep conservative leaning, but you can also have now an all-female congressional delegation and occupation.
Exit polls in the New Hampshire primary, and I love the New Hampshire primary, and all my problems with Iowa do not extend to New Hampshire. But is that I think of any state the Republicans had a primary, New Hampshire had the lowest percentage of evangelical voters taking part in the primary.
Well, that's the most secular corner of America.
And it's also high voting, and it also is in such a change when the Democrats took over the lower house of the legislature in 2006. I believe was the first time that it happened since the 19th century.
Yeah. You talk about the term high voting. So I know we spent a lot of nights, or a lot of tonight, dwelling on some of the negative trends in American politics. But one of the positive trends is, at least the prediction, if it holds, is that we were going to see an increased level of voter participation this year, a higher turnout rate as we've seen. What? We don't know yet, but that was the predicted trend, and which is interesting given the sort of glum mood of the country, the low opinion of both candidates, to see what is predicted, we don't yet know, of a healthy level of turnout.
Also, the early voting certainly encourages turnout, and you know.
I'm going to interrupt you, Walter, because I'm hearing they're introducing the President of the United States, Barack Obama, who is projected to have just won re-election to his second term in the White House, and here he is with his family, Sasha and Malia, the daughters, First Lady Michelle Obama, and a crowd going wild. Let's listen.
Welcome back to live election coverage from the LA Times newsroom. I'm David Lazarus. As we approach the finish line, President Barack Obama has taken the stage at the McCormick Place Convention Center in Chicago, where the crowd has been waiting for well over an hour for the president, newly re-elected, to come out and give his victory speech. Just a little while ago, we carried Mitt Romney's concession speech in Boston, Massachusetts. An honorable speech, a magnanimous speech, as Romney thanked the president, thanked Paul Ryan, thanked his family for being behind him, and looked ahead to another Obama administration and said that it's time to come behind the president and put aside partisan differences and become essentially one nation Americans. Now, President Obama expected to sound a similar theme as he gives his victory speech. As we look at live pictures, First Family walking off the stage now. Let's go live to Chicago as the president starts to speak.
Tonight, more than 200 years after a former colony won the right to determine its own destiny, the task of perfecting our union moves forward. It moves forward because of you. It moves forward because you reaffirmed the spirit that has triumphed over war and depression, the spirit that has lifted this country from the depths of despair to the great heights of hope, the belief that while each of us will pursue our own individual dreams, we are an American family and we rise or fall together as one nation and as one people. Tonight, in this election, you, the American people, reminded us that while our road has been hard, while our journey has been long, we have picked ourselves up. We have fought our way back. And we know in our hearts that for the United States of America, the best is yet to come. I want to thank every American who participated in this election. Whether you voted for the very first time or waited in line for a very long time. By the way, we have to fix that. Whether you pounded the pavement or picked up the phone. Whether you held an Obama sign or a Romney sign, you made your voice heard, and you made a difference. I just spoke with Governor Romney, and I congratulated him and Paul Ryan on a hard-fought campaign. We may have battled fiercely, but it's only because we love this country deeply. And we care so strongly about its future. From George to Lenore to their son Mitt, the Romney family has chosen to give back to America through public service. And that is a legacy that we honor and applaud tonight. In the weeks ahead, I also look forward to sitting down with Governor Romney to talk about where we can work together to move this country forward. I want to thank my friend and partner of the last 4 years, America's happy warrior, the best vice president anybody could ever hope for, Joe Biden. And I wouldn't be the man I am today without the woman who agreed to marry me 20 years ago. I say this publicly, Michelle, I have never loved you more. I have never been prouder to watch the rest of America fall in love with you too, as our nation's First Lady. Sasha and Malia, before our very eyes, you're growing up to become two strong, smart, beautiful young women, just like your mom. And I'm so proud of you guys. But I will say that for now, one dog's probably enough. To the best campaign team and volunteers in the history of politics, the best ever. new this time around, and some of you have been at my side since the very beginning. But all of you are family. No matter what you do or where you go from here, you will carry the memory of the history we made together. And you will have the lifelong appreciation of a grateful president. Thank you for believing all the way to every hill, to every valley. You lifted me up the whole way, and I will always be grateful for everything that you've done and all the incredible work that you've put in. I know that political campaigns can sometimes seem small, even silly. And that provides plenty of fodder for the cynics who tell us that politics is nothing more than a contest of egos or the domain of special interests. But if you ever get the chance to talk to folks who turned out at our rallies and crowded along a rope line in a high school gym, or saw folks working late at a campaign office in some tiny county far away from home, you'll discover something else. You'll hear the determination in the voice of a young field organizer who's working his way through college and wants to make sure every child has that same opportunity. You'll hear the pride in the voice of a volunteer who's going door to door because her brother was finally hired when the local auto plant added another shift. You'll hear the deep patriotism in the voice of a military spouse who's working the phones late at night to make sure that no one who fights for this country ever has to fight for a job or a roof over their head when they come home. That's why we do this. That's what politics can be. That's why elections matter. It's not small, it's big. It's important. Democracy in a nation of 300 million can be noisy and messy and complicated. We have our own opinions. Each of us has deeply held beliefs. And when we go through tough times, when we make big decisions as a country, it necessarily stirs passions, stirs up controversy. That won't change after tonight, and it shouldn't. These arguments we have are a mark of our liberty. And we can never forget that as we speak, people in distant nations are risking their lives right now just for a chance to argue about the issues that matter. The chance to cast their ballots like we did today. But despite all our differences, most of us share certain hopes for America's future. We want our kids to grow up in a country where they have access to the best schools and the best teachers. A country that lives up to its legacy as the global leader in technology and discovery and innovation, with all the good jobs and new businesses that follow. We want our children to live in America that isn't burdened by debt, that isn't weakened by inequality, that isn't threatened by the destructive power of a warming planet. We want to pass on a country that's safe and respected and admired around the world. A nation that is defended by the strongest military on earth and the best troops this world has ever known. But also a country that moves with confidence, beyond this time of war to shape a peace that is built on the promise of freedom and dignity for every human being. We believe in a generous America, in a compassionate America, in a tolerant America, open to the dreams of an immigrant's daughter who studies in our schools and pledges to our flag. To the young boy on the south side of Chicago who sees a life beyond the nearest street corner. To the furniture worker's child in North Carolina who wants to become a doctor or a scientist, an engineer or an entrepreneur, a diplomat or even a president. That's the future we hope for. That's the vision we share. That's where we need to go. Forward. That's where we need to go. Now, we will disagree, sometimes fiercely, about how to get there. As it has for more than 2 centuries, progress will come in fits and starts. It's not always a straight line. It's not always a smooth path. By itself, the recognition that we have common hopes and dreams won't end all the gridlock or solve all our problems or substitute for the painstaking work of building consensus and making the difficult compromises needed to move this country forward. But that common bond is where we must begin. Our economy is recovering. A decade of war is ending. A long campaign is now over. And whether I earned your vote or not, I have listened to you. I have learned from you. And you've made me a better president. And with your stories and your struggles, I return to the White House more determined and more inspired than ever about the work there is to do and the future that lies ahead. Tonight, you voted for action, not politics as usual. You elected us to focus on your jobs, not ours. And in the coming weeks and months, I am looking forward to reaching out and working with leaders of both parties to meet the challenges we can only solve together. Reducing our deficit, reforming our tax code, fixing our immigration system, freeing ourselves from foreign oil. We've got more work to do. But that doesn't mean your work is done. The role of citizen in our democracy does not end with your vote. America's never been about what can be done for us. It's about what can be done by us together through the hard and frustrating but necessary work of self-government. That's the principle we were founded on. This country has more wealth than any nation, but that's not what makes us rich. We have the most powerful military in history, but that's not what makes us strong. Our university, our culture, are all the envy of the world, but that's not what keeps the world coming to our shores. What makes America exceptional are the bonds that hold together the most diverse nation on earth. The belief that our destiny is shared, that this country only works when we accept certain obligations to one another and to future generations, so that the freedom which so many Americans have fought for and died for comes with responsibilities, as well as among those are love and charity and duty and patriotism. That's what makes America great. hopeful tonight because I've seen the spirit at work in America. I've seen it in the family business whose owners would rather cut their own pay than lay off their neighbors. And in the workers who would rather cut back their hours than see a friend lose a job. I've seen it in the soldiers who re-enlist after losing a limb. And in those SEALs who charged up the stairs into darkness and danger because they knew there was a buddy behind them watching their back. I've seen it on the shores of New Jersey and New York, where leaders from every party and level of government have swept aside their differences to help a community rebuild from the wreckage of a terrible storm. And I saw it just the other day in Menor, Ohio, where a father told the story of his 8-year-old daughter whose long battle with leukemia nearly cost their family everything. Had it not been for health care reform passing just a few months before the insurance company was about to stop paying for her care. I had an opportunity to not just talk to the father, but meet this incredible daughter of his. And when he spoke to the crowd, listening to that father's story, every parent in that room had tears in their eyes. Because we knew that little girl could be our own. And I know that every American wants her future to be just as bright. That's who we are. That's the country I'm so proud to lead as your president. And tonight, despite all the hardship we've been through, despite all the frustrations of Washington, I've never been more hopeful about our future. I have never been more hopeful about America. And I ask you to sustain that hope. I'm not talking about blind optimism, the kind of hope that just ignores the enormity of the tasks ahead or the roadblocks that stand in our path. I'm not talking about the wishful idealism that allows us to just sit on the sidelines or shirk from a fight. I have always believed that hope is that stubborn thing inside us that insists, despite all the evidence to the contrary, that something better awaits us, so long as we have the courage to keep reaching, to keep working, to keep fighting. America, I believe we can build on the progress we've made and continue to fight for new jobs and new opportunity and new security for the middle class. I believe we can keep the promise of our founding, the idea that if you're willing to work hard, it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from or what you look like or where you love. It doesn't matter whether you're black or white or Hispanic or Asian or Native American or young or old or rich or poor, able, disabled, gay or straight. You can make it here in America if you're willing to try. I believe we can seize this future together because we are not as divided as our politics suggests. We're not as cynical as the pundits believe. We are greater than the sum of our individual ambitions, and we remain more than a collection of red states and blue states. We are and forever will be the United States of America. And together, with your help and God's grace, we will continue our journey forward and remind the world just why it is that we live in the greatest nation on earth. Thank you, America. God bless you. God bless these United States.
President Barack Obama. A remarkable American story. Think about this. Not too long ago, he was an obscure state senator in Illinois. Tonight, delivering a victory speech, having just been reelected to his second term in the White House. Waving to the crowd, he declared during his speech that the long campaign is over.
Well, never let it be said the man can't finish up a speech. A relatively muted speech for much of it, but boy did Obama close it with big cadence, big ideas, big rhetoric, and the big delivery for which he is famous. That was President Obama delivering his victory speech after sealing the deal today and winning 4 more years in the White House. This is continuing coverage from the LA Times newsroom. I'm David Lazarus, and you know, he took the stage today to Stevie Wonder's song "Signed, Sealed, and Delivered," and that was the message he was getting out there. Probably a whole lot better than leaving on a jet plane, which is not the message he wanted to get out there. Not a lot of specifics in this speech, except a lot of flag waving, a lot of hope, a lot of confidence, and a lot of good feeling. Jim Rainey, you watched the same speech as me. I thought until he hit that finish line, he was just sort of touching every base that he needed to touch.
Right, right. Well, they say, I don't know who first said it, but that you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. Definitely President Obama at the end tonight tried to bring back the poetry. I think for his supporters and maybe for a lot of Americans did bring back the poetry at the end. He talked about red states and blue states and how we are not those different divided states. We're the United States of America. That's a line, of course, he used famously 4 years ago, and actually going back to his convention speech when he first emerged as an unknown at the Democratic convention. And, you know, here he brings it all back to that note of positivism. We'll see how it plays with a lot of America. You could tell in the crowd there they loved it. He was obviously sort of back on his game as being the person who can really deliver a speech. And, you know, whether that still inspires people, I think it does tonight. A lot of his supporters, how it flies in the long run, we'll just have to see.
And as President Obama said, the real work begins tomorrow. The House remains in Republican hands, the Senate remains in Democratic hands, and now the real work again. But we're not done here, even though we're going to conclude our coverage right now for tonight. The California propositions, the California races that kind of took a backseat to President Obama and Mitt Romney today will be delved into in great detail tomorrow. And we'll be back again here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. at latimes.com to kick it into high gear again and bring you up to the minute coverage of all of the races, all the news you need to know. I'm David Lazarus for Sarah Hashim-Juarez, Jim Rainey, and the rest of the crew, and I want to give a big round of thanks to all the people here at the LA Times who made tonight possible. We'll see you again tomorrow. Good night.